So hello, my name is Collin Buck, and for my senior project, I researched post-traumatic stress disorder. An estimated 8% of Americans, approximately 24.4 million people, have PTSD at any given time. This correlates to about the size of Texas. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition that is caused by an extreme traumatic experience. Experiences such as war, natural disaster, crashes, terrorist attacks, death, abuse, and even childhood neglect. While working, I came across a story of a man by the name of Carlos Huerta, and his story connects to my topic as it explains exactly what I was wishing to learn about. His story begins like this. One day in September of 2010, 5 years after I last left the battlefield, I don't know what the trigger was. Maybe it was a young soldier, maybe a mother of two, or the woman who I'd watched cut down after she hanged herself weeks after returning from battle earlier. Maybe it was the faces of the children I see on all the doors I knock on to tell them that their father or mother was not coming home. Or maybe because it was the same time of year when my uniform was covered with the blood and the brains of a 6-year-old child who was caught in IED during Ramadan. I don't know what the trigger was, but it hit me hard. While reading this story, I realized that different forms of visual representations have a tremendous impact on the men and women that have dealt with traumatic experiences. I told this story because it tells of how many different things Mr. Huerta believed could have triggered his post-traumatic stress. And if you notice, all of the things that he lists are visual things, all visual representations. These remembrances are his so-called triggers. There are many different types of triggers for people suffering from post-traumatic stress, some more common than others. These triggers are broken down into two sections, internal and external triggers. Internal are things such as anger, anxiety, sadness, memories, feeling alone, frustration, and pain. And external triggers are things such as arguments, seeing a car crash, certain smells, holidays, specific places, and even people. Once you set off a trigger, symptoms will become visual. Like triggers, there are many different types of symptoms. Symptoms such as flashbacks, bad dreams, guilt, depression, and even sleep deprivation. These symptoms will vary from person to person and impact people very differently. For the volunteering portion of my project, I worked at the New Hampshire Veterans Cemetery in Boscawen, and I would be using a GIS system to input the information of headstones into a collector app that was created by a company called Esri National Security. With this information, I was looking to create a website and an app where you could search a name of anyone in the cemetery and find out everything about them, including their location. Mr. Warwick introduced me to this project, as well as Dr. Namey, who is my mentor, and Mr. DeAngelis, who is also a huge help. Before we got to the collecting, though, Mr. Warwick and I had to create web maps for all the headstones and columbarium sections. And what is a columbarium, you may ask? It is a large concrete slab with slots for urns on both sides. When making these web maps, we had to use a placeholder image from 2010. This was because we were waiting for a company called KeyW to do a flyover imaging of the cemetery, such as this one from 2010. This imaging was going to be of 4-inch resolution, meaning that you would be able to see two different objects as long as they were 4 inches or further apart. Once we finished these web maps and linked them to an Excel spreadsheet of everyone that was in the cemetery, it was time for my busy work. So Mr. Warwick, Mr. DeAngelis, myself, and a few other men from the National Guard began taking pictures of each individual plaque on the columbariums. The columbarium sections hold a large number of people in the Veterans Cemetery, approximately 3,000 of the 7,000 that are buried there. And each columbarium block contains around 60 to 240 names, this varying from which section it was in, either A, B, C, or H, and varies depending if plaques have 2 names, as in like a married couple. In short, I did not reach the goal I set for myself of making a website and an app. However, I'm working to get a student in the next semester to finish my project. I will also continue working with Mr. Warwick, not only for community service hours, but just to be a part of a really meaningful project. And I believe that everyone should work towards a goal, whether big or small, because it'll make a difference somewhere.
Anybody have any questions?
Collin, I'm just curious, why didn't you finish the project? Why weren't you able to?
We had a couple technical difficulties with putting all the images into the database where after we took all the pictures we had to sync them with the Excel spreadsheets. We had a lot of difficulties getting all of them to sync correctly, so we never actually got to do the individual headstones. We only got to do the columbarium sections. Well, my dad and sister had both gone to West Point and served in the military, so it felt kind of like a meaningful project to me and a meaningful project just overall. Gilbert.
What is the connection between your study of PTSD and what you actually did for your project, which was the pictures?
I